Is this okay for my heart health? This is by far the number one question asked about eating carnivore or animal-based because for 60 years, red meat has been implicated as a cause of heart disease. Now, we've been told that saturated fat in meat, butter, and eggs raises cholesterol, which in turn leads to clogged arteries and heart attacks. But that simply is not true. Since 2011, there have been over 20 reviews by nutrition experts of the clinical trials used to support the diet heart hypothesis that was established in the late 1950s that cited saturated fat as the culprit in cardiovascular disease. Well, every single review concluded that there was no causal evidence linking saturated fat to heart disease. There have also been several observational studies that found higher saturated fat diets were actually associated with a lower risk of strokes and death. The evidence was so strong that in 2015, the American Heart Association reversed its position on capping the amount of saturated fat in the diet, but I bet you didn't hear about that. However, a new advisory committee has recently come into power and is looking to roll back that AHA stance despite the overwhelming evidence. Why? For the same reason this false narrative was established in the first place: money, politics, and conflicts of interest, but certainly not science. Cholesterol is not the enemy. The fact is, every cell in your body requires cholesterol. The real issue with cholesterol is not the amounts, it's the ratios. So while saturated fat might raise your LDL, it can also raise your HDL, which has been shown to be very protective against cardiovascular disease. Another point on LDL. The literature shows that the prevalence of heart disease is no different in people with low LDL compared to those with high LDL, which should make us wonder why we put so much stock in LDL numbers. And one of the cholesterol markers we're particularly concerned with being too high is triglycerides. But guess what causes an unhealthy increase in triglycerides? Carbohydrates. And guess what carbohydrates also impact? Your insulin sensitivity and resistance. People who are insulin resistant are at the highest risk for cardiovascular disease, yet it's recommended by the powers that be that we consume a diet high in carbohydrates and low in the cholesterol that every cell in our body requires. Interesting. The bottom line is that the current 10% cap on saturated fat, as advised by the US dietary guidelines for Americans, is not supported by any scientific evidence. The best action you can take for your heart health is to lose fat, be insulin sensitive, and do resistance training.